To emphasize just how stupid the media narrative about Ukraine winning the war and beating Russia really is, I want to take a minute to imagine a parallel universe where the Russia-Ukraine war happens in reverse. Let's imagine for a second that in 2014, instead of Russia taking Crimea, Ukraine were to take a large chunk of Russia. Let's say that Ukraine takes up a large piece of Russian land from Rostov to Dagestan and Chechnya. This is followed by widespread unrests throughout the entirety of Western Russia, and about a third of Western Russia, which is the more industrialized and economically developed part of Russia, becomes de facto independent. And let's then imagine that this piece of southern Russia, which is now part of Ukraine, becomes much more economically developed than it ever was before, while Russia falls into a deep economic crisis, basically loses half of its economy. Millions of people start emigrating from Russia every single year, all the way from 2014 up until 2022. And then, starting on February 24th, 2022, Ukraine invades Russia and very quickly takes over an enormous part of Russian territory. Just takes up this huge belt of Russian land, all the way from Kursk in western Russia to Yekaterinburg, all the way in Siberia, and besieges the city of Novosibirsk. As this is happening, as Ukrainian forces are moving throughout Russian territory, basically unpunished, Ukraine is also firing missiles, hitting barracks, airfields, fuel depots, railroads, bridges, oil processing facilities, all throughout Russian territory, from the west of Russia all the way to Vladivostok and Kamchatka. The entire arms industry in Russia has long since been destroyed. It's basically been evaporated by the combination of these missile strikes and by the fact that Ukrainian forces are on the ground and have taken over many of the cities where weapons are manufactured. So Russia can't produce any more weapons. Russia can only rely on some scraps that it purchases or is gifted to by other countries, which is outdated and only available in small quantities. Russia cannot produce more of its own weaponry. And as this is happening, millions, perhaps even tens of millions of military-aged Russian men are fleeing Russia, moving to other countries, moving to Kyrgyzstan, to Georgia, to Kazakhstan, and all of the other neighboring countries. Basically fleeing the war, trying desperately to avoid the draft because they do not want to die at the hands of Ukrainian soldiers. So this is the situation that we are trying to imagine just for a second, happening in some parallel universe. Now imagine that in this parallel universe you have all of these Western media analysts, all of these bloggers, all of these pro-Western individuals who are looking at the war from the outside and are saying with a straight face that Russia is actually winning, that Ukraine is losing the war because Ukraine hasn't taken Moscow yet. They're saying that Ukraine hasn't taken Moscow in March or in April, therefore clearly Russia is winning. Of course, this is what is actually happening in our universe, but in reverse. This is the desperate situation that Ukraine is in. This is objectively just how far Ukraine has fallen from 2014, how much Ukraine has lost, and Western media analysts are saying with a completely straight face that Russia is losing the war and that Ukraine is about to win. So this is just some food for thought that I wanted to put out there for everybody to think about. Of course, this assumes that the situation that is happening between Russia and Ukraine isn't just the war that started on February 24th, but that it's the conflict that has been going on ever since 2014, and that it's not just a conflict between two states, but a conflict between two different groups of people. Those who associate themselves more with the government in Kiev, and those who associate more with the government in Moscow. Anyways, this is the extent to which Mainstream media in the West is lying. They are lying through their teeth. They are doubling down on the most ridiculous narratives, and it is frankly shocking to see how many people buy into these lies.
I was the CIA director. We lied, we cheated, we stole. It was like we had entire training courses. It reminds you of the glory of the American experiment.